Tonight, you do not need to be impressive or productive or wise. You do not need to finish a thought, make a decision, or solve a single lingering thing from the day behind you. Tonight, all that is asked of you is far gentler than that. Tonight, you are only here to listen and to let the listening grow softer and softer, until even that becomes effortless. Imagine the night opening, not above you, but around you, like a wide and patient curtain made of velvet shadow. Behind it waits a place so calm that the mind has no reason to brace itself there. Somewhere far beyond the busy edges of the world, beyond roofs and roads and clocks and windows lit too late, there is a cloud of living light resting quietly in the dark. It does not call your name in any urgent way. It does not pull. It does not insist. It simply waits with the same kind of patience the sea has for a pebble on the shore, or the moon has for the turning earth. You do not have to reach that place quickly. You do not have to earn your way toward it. In a little while, you will drift there as naturally as a leaf finding still water. For now, it is enough to know that such a place exists, and that for this one night, it belongs to no one else's story but yours. A silent cradle in the far reaches of the heavens, a chamber of color and hush, a place where even wonder knows how to whisper. So before the journey begins, let the night gather close around you. Let the room be only a room. Let the bed beneath you be only a bed. Let the weight you have carried all day begin to loosen, strand by strand, without force. There is nowhere else you need to arrive first, no doorway to hurry through, no final task waiting in the next minute. What comes next will come slowly. What softens will soften in its own time. And if, as you listen, some part of you still feels alert, still standing a little guard, still holding on out of habit, let that be all right too. Nothing in this story requires perfection. You are allowed to arrive gradually. You are allowed to keep only half an ear on the words until even that feels like too much effort. You are allowed to drift in and out of meaning. The stars will not mind. The night will not mind. The long, luminous hush waiting out in the deep dark will welcome you at any pace. In a little while, you will feel the ordinary world begin to loosen at its edges. You will feel a spaciousness enter. You will sense a glow somewhere in the distance, tender and unthreatening, like light seen through closed eyelids. But not yet. First, let the body understand that it is safe enough to rest. First, let the breath become the only quiet work left to do. Take one easy breath in, not because you must breathe deeply, but because the body often likes a small invitation. And then let it go. Another, if you want, or simply notice the breath already moving on its own, rising and falling without needing your help. Bring your attention to the places where your body is touching what supports it. The weight of your heels, the quiet angle of your calves, the backs of your thighs, the resting bowl of your hips, the slow spread of your shoulders, the place where your head is offered up to the pillow. There is a kind of honesty in these points of contact. They ask for nothing except that you be here. Let your awareness drift down to your feet. You do not need to picture them perfectly. Just sense them in the dark of your own attention. Imagine the smallest tension slipping out through the soles, as though your feet have finally remembered that they are allowed to stop carrying you. Let the toes unclench. Let the arches go slack. Let the heels sink a little deeper into stillness. Now your ankles and your lower legs, if there is any holding there, let it soften by degrees. Nothing sudden, nothing dramatic, just the slow feeling of a knot loosening in warm water. Your calves do not need to stay prepared. Your shins do not need to remain alert. They can be ordinary now, quiet now, at ease. Let that easing move up into the knees and the thighs. These large muscles that have done so much for you today can unfasten now. Imagine them growing pleasantly heavy, not with strain, but with rest. A deep, grounded heaviness, a kind of kindness from gravity, the kind that says, you do not need to hold yourself up right now. The bed will do that. The night will do that. Bring your attention to the hips, to the bowl of the pelvis, to the lower back where so many people keep the little unnoticed braces of the day. Let those hidden efforts begin to fade. If you find a place still gripping, there is no need to fight it. Just breathe near it. Offer it patience. Sometimes the body lets go fastest when it is not being watched too hard. Now the belly, let it be soft. Let it rise without being corrected. Let it fall without being managed. There is no audience here, and no need to make the breath beautiful. Your body knows the old language of sleeping. It has not forgotten. Your chest too can loosen, allowing each breath a little more room, a little less interference. Nothing to improve, nothing to perform. Feel the shoulders, the front of them, the backs of them, the way they may still be carrying tiny unfinished messages from the day. Let those messages dissolve before they ever need to be read. The shoulders can lower, the collarbones can widen, the upper back can spread against the bed as if a quiet hand has smoothed across it and said, enough now. You can rest. Let that easing move down the arms, upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, palms, fingers. The hands especially. So often, they remain half ready, even in stillness, as if the next task might appear and need to be done. But nothing is about to be placed into them tonight. No tool, no phone, no responsibility. The fingers can uncurl, the palms can empty, the hands can become warm, loose, and quiet. Now the throat and the neck. Let the throat be clear and unburdened. Let the neck rest its private efforts. The jaw can loosen. The tongue can settle. The space behind the eyes can soften. The cheeks can ease. The forehead can smooth. Even the scalp can let go. As strange as that sounds, as though the very thoughts once held too tightly, they are finding room to dissolve. And all together now, the body is one whole field of gentle sensation. Not perfect calm perhaps, but calmer. Not complete emptiness, but more space than before. A little heavier, a little quieter, a little less interested in the day. The body already beginning to understand what the mind has not yet fully trusted. That tonight, there is nothing left to defend against. Tonight, rest is allowed. Stay here for a few breaths longer, with everything softened and supported. Let the mattress hold your shape exactly as it is. Let the room fade to the edges. Let the body grow so comfortable in stillness that the next thing it notices is not the room at all, but a vastness opening gently beyond it. At first it feels less like going somewhere and more like something around you becoming wider. The room does not vanish so much as loosen. The ceiling lifts away. The walls become unimportant. The air around you deepens into a great, quiet openness, and before long, you are no longer aware of edges at all. You are floating, not falling, not searching for balance, simply floating in a darkness so soft it feels almost blue, almost silver, almost like a hush made visible. Beneath you, there is no ground, and yet nothing in you is alarmed by that. The body understands immediately that this is not the dangerous kind of depth. This is the kind that holds, the kind that asks nothing of your muscles, the kind that lets every part of you be carried without effort. Around you, stars are scattered in long, patient distances. Some are bright and cold as tiny polished stones. Others glow with a warmth so faint and steady, they feel like embers that have never known wind. None of them crowd you. None of them flash. They simply remain where they are, companionable in their stillness, keeping the shape of the dark from ever feeling empty. You drift among them as calmly as a seed drifting in summer air. There is no tug of urgency anywhere in this place, no sharp sound, no demand. Even your thoughts, if they rise, seem to do so more slowly here, as though the mind itself has entered a gentler weather. The breath moves with remarkable ease, in, out, not deep, not shallow, only untroubled. If you notice how far away the world must be, let that distance comfort you. Down there are lists, messages, unfinished corners of ordinary life. But all of that belongs to another rhythm. It cannot reach you here. Here there are no names to answer to, no expressions to manage, no practical decisions waiting for you in the next 5 minutes. Here there is only the soft suspension of being, and the deep relief of not having to continue the day. A kind of quiet joy may begin to unfold in you, though it does not need a name. It is the feeling of being unobserved and yet perfectly accompanied. The feeling of not being alone and yet not being asked for anything. The stars do not expect a story from you. They do not need your cleverness or your strength. They are simply near. And that is enough. You drift a little farther. The darkness seems to breathe around you, widening and settling in gentle pulses. In that vast cushioned silence, the old habit of holding yourself together begins to seem unnecessary. You do not need to stay collected. You do not need to stay sharp. Nothing here benefits from your tension. The cosmos around you is too spacious for the small knots of worry to survive for long. One by one, they loosen and fall away, disappearing into the dark like tiny pebbles dropped into a deep, still lake. And because this place is kind, every time the journey opens into something new, it gives you softness first. It gives you quiet first. Even now, as a distant brightness begins to gather somewhere ahead, you remain completely safe. The stars keep their slow watch. The darkness stays tender. The breath goes on, easy and unforced. Whatever waits in that growing light does not disturb the peace that carries you. It only adds to it, little by little. So let yourself continue. Let yourself float toward the faint radiance ahead without deciding anything about it yet. Curiosity can be soft. Wonder can be restful. Even the unknown, in a place like this, can feel like a blanket being laid gently over your shoulders. There is a lovely anonymity in this drifting. You are still yourself, of course. But all the harder edges of identity have become unimportant. You are not your schedule here, not your role, not the version of yourself required by daylight. You are only a quiet living presence moving through a field of stars. Sometimes that is the deepest rest of all, to exist without being narrowed by explanation. If, for a moment, you wonder whether you should be doing more, let the stars answer on your behalf. See how they burn without strain. See how the dark keeps them company, without needing applause or proof. Nothing in this place is performing. Nothing is trying to get ahead of its own nature. And because of that, the whole expanse feels trustworthy. You may be simple here. You may be still. You may let your awareness drift wide and then grow hazy around the edges. Even the silence has texture, not emptiness, but layered hush, a distant glitter, a soft, immeasurable depth, the kind of silence in which sleep can imagine itself long before it fully arrives. Rest inside it as long as you like. The journey has already begun, and it will keep beginning gently, with or without your full attention. The glow ahead is so faint at first that it could almost be mistaken for a memory. Not a clear memory, but the sense of one, something warm seen from very far away, something that does not belong to the sharp, practical world. You might have drifted past it without noticing, if not for the way it seems to pulse with a slow and living rhythm, as though it were breathing in the dark. You do not move toward it by trying. The distance between you and that light simply begins to lessen. A soft current, too gentle to be felt as motion, takes hold of your drifting body and carries you onward. There is no resistance in you, no reason to hold back. Everything about the light suggests welcome, not invitation in the human sense, with insistence or expectation, but welcome in the oldest sense. Space made ready, quiet kept open. As you draw closer, color begins to separate from brightness. At first, there is only the faintest wash of silver blue, a suggestion more than a hue. Then a pale thread of violet appears at one edge, and a veil of pearl light behind it. Soon there are blushes of rose and long dissolving strokes of gold, each one so subtle that you do not notice the change at the moment it happens. The colors arrive the way sleep arrives, by degrees too soft to measure. The shape of the light remains difficult to define, and perhaps that is part of its gentleness. It has no hard border, no edge meant to warn, no outline meant to impress. Instead, it opens through the dark like a tide of luminous mist, expanding and curling back on itself, folding and unfolding in silent layers. Some portions are deep and velvety, shaded with indigo and quiet plum. Others are bright enough to remind you of the inside of a shell, or moonlight passing through thin clouds, or sunlight remembered through closed eyes. You begin to understand that this is no distant star, no single point of fire. It is something wider, slower, stranger, and softer. A cradle of light, a field of color suspended in the deep hush of space, a place where matter itself seems to drift in long, graceful thought. And although you have never been here before, some part of you responds as if you have been expected. There is comfort in that feeling, comfort in not needing to explain why this far-off wonder feels familiar. Perhaps some places are familiar, not because we have seen them, but because they resemble states we have longed for all our lives. Spaciousness without emptiness, beauty without demand, presence without noise. The glowing cloud ahead seems to hold all of these at once. You drift nearer and notice that the colors are not still. They move in slow ceremonial currents. A ribbon of pale jade winds through a pool of blue-black radiance. A sweep of rose light softens into lilac, then thins into silver mist. Deeper in, there are regions of warm amber that seem almost candlelit, though no flame could survive in such a place. Every motion is unhurried. Every change takes its time. Nothing in this vast, luminous body seems eager to become anything quickly. And still, while the strangeness grows, the sense of safety remains untouched. This matters because wonder can sometimes wake the mind too sharply if it arrives without tenderness. But this light does not sharpen you. It rounds you. It eases you further into stillness. It says, without words, that you may look without needing to understand. You may approach without needing to name. You may belong here without ever needing a reason. Now you can see it more clearly, a nebula. Though the word is almost too small for what it feels like. Not a diagram, not an object pinned in a textbook sky, but a living expanse of color and hush, opened wide in the darkness, like a dream that the universe has been having for a very long time. A place where things begin slowly, a place where silence is never empty, a place that shines as though it has all the time in creation to become itself. For a while, you do nothing but drift toward it and watch. That is enough. Watching is enough. The old hunger to get somewhere, to arrive, to interpret, to be efficient, has no foothold here. There is only the widening radiance, the delicate movement of color, and the deepening sense that whatever lies within this glowing vastness will meet you gently. Nothing hurries you, nothing tests you, the current remains kind. And then, just when the nebula has become large enough to fill not only your vision, but your whole sense of direction, the space between you and it begins to fill with smaller lights, as though the way forward has been strewn with quiet companions. They are not clustered densely enough to overwhelm the dark. Rather, they appear with the right kind of generosity, one by one, and then in little drifts, each star keeping its own space, while still helping form a path. Some hang far off, steady and reserved, like lanterns placed along a distant road. Others float nearer, bright enough to cast a faint sheen across the drifting mist between them. Together, they make the darkness feel companioned. You move among them with the same slow ease as before. There is no weaving required, no alertness needed, no sense that you might collide with anything. The stars seem to understand your pace. Those nearest to you glow with a gentle tact, as if dimming and brightening by instinct, so they never startle the eye. Some are cool white, some blue, some amber, some with a faint blush at their edges. Each has a personality of light, though none would ever call attention to itself. Now and then one seems to brighten just a little as you pass, and it is easy to imagine that the field of stars has noticed you. Not in the way a crowd notices, not with scrutiny or judgment, more the way a garden notices rain, the way a shoreline notices tide, a natural recognition, a quiet adjustment. You do not have to be anyone special to receive it. You only have to be here. There is a peace in being accompanied by things that make no claims on you. These stars do not ask where you have been or why you were tired. They do not ask what you meant when you said something hours ago, or whether you answered every message correctly, or whether you are making enough of your life. They simply shine, and somehow, in their shining, they create a corridor of permission. Permission to keep drifting, permission to keep softening, permission to be small in the best possible way. One star lingers near your left side for a moment longer than the others. It is not the brightest one, but it has a tenderness in its glow, a warm white light with the faintest gold at its heart. You turn your attention toward it and feel, not in words but in sensation, a small exchange pass between you and that steady brightness. A greeting, perhaps, or simple acknowledgement, a quiet hello in the language of light. Then the star slips back into the field, and you continue on. Ahead, the path widens. The nebula fills more of the darkness now, its outer veils drifting like colored breath across the horizon of space. Yet the stars remain with you, appearing in soft intervals, keeping the journey from ever feeling too broad or lonely. Some seem young and clear as silver bells, others feel ancient, their light mellow and calm, as if it has crossed unimaginable distances without once losing its patience. You notice, too, that the space here has its own peculiar texture. Not air, not wind, and yet there is a sense of movement across the skin. A cool hush gliding past, as though the dark itself were in motion. It carries no chill that bites, only freshness, spaciousness, the feeling of being brushed by something vast and impossibly gentle. Your body, though floating in all this openness, remains wholly at ease. The bed you left behind feels both far away and somehow still beneath you, translated into this new form of support. The further you travel among the stars, the less interested the mind becomes in making plans. There is nothing to prepare for. Nothing arrives abruptly here. Even the loveliest surprises unfurl slowly enough to leave your calm intact. This, perhaps, is the hidden generosity of the place. Every new beauty is wrapped first in stillness. Every revelation is padded with peace. A pair of distant stars gleam side by side, then fade gently behind you. A loose arc of tiny lights stretches ahead like a whispered smile. Off to one side, a larger star glows in quiet amber, calm as a lamp left burning in a safe window. You pass close enough to feel its light on you, not as heat, but as a delicate reassurance, the kind that says you are still being guided, though no one is directing you with words. And after a while, when the stars have become not only scenery but company, the field begins to grow thinner. More space opens between the lights. The path seems to widen into a broad, dark lane. There is no sense of leaving anything behind, only of being handed gently onward. The stars do not vanish in sadness. They simply remain where they are, their work complete, their quiet companionship lingering in you. You are still safe. More than safe, perhaps you are carried. You are watched over by a silence that means you no harm. The nebula waits ahead, larger now, brighter at its edges. And if there is any excitement in you, it is wrapped so deeply in calm that it feels almost like drowsiness. Then, through the long dark ahead, another light appears in motion. Not fixed like a star, not broad like the nebula, a swift but graceful thread of brightness, gliding across the hush as if it already knows the way. At one point, a loose cluster of faint blue stars gathers far beneath you. So soft and numerous, they resemble a small forgotten harbor reflected in midnight water. You pass over them slowly, and the sight gives you the odd, comforting sense that the universe is full of safe places where light knows how to be quiet. A little later, a line of warmer stars appears off to your right, glowing in amber and pale cream, like distant windows in a village no one needs to reach before morn. You do not need to keep these images. That is another gift. Each one can touch you and go. The star field does not ask to be remembered accurately. It only asks to be received. Its beauty is not made of details alone, but of the feeling that the way ahead has been made kindly, that even in the wide dark there are gentle markers, soft witnesses, small steady presences to accompany your drifting. And as the field begins at last to thin, you are calmer for having passed through it, as though each star has quietly taken some unneeded alertness from you and left behind only ease. At first you notice the trail before the traveler itself, a long pale brushstroke of light drawn delicately across the dark, thinning at the end into dust-fine shimmer. Then the bright body of the comet comes into view, not blazing wildly, but moving with an elegant certainty that makes the whole expanse feel more ordered, more intimate, more beautifully arranged than before. Its head is a clear jewel of white and silver, with a breath of blue around it, and its tail unfurls behind, in layers so soft and luminous that they seem woven from frost and starlight. It travels neither fast enough to alarm, nor slowly enough to seem still. It has the perfect pace for this place, a pace that suggests purpose without pressure, a pace that invites without insisting. You watch as it glides before you, and for a while it becomes easy to believe that the comet has arrived not by chance, but for you, not because you are the center of anything, but because kindness often takes shape in forms that feel personal. A bird appearing exactly when a window needs brightening, a breeze passing through just when a room has grown close, comet crossing the quiet dark just when the road toward wonder asks for a little light, guidance. The light spilling from its tail is astonishingly soft, not harsh on the eyes, not sharp against the dark. It drifts in long translucent veils that ripple and fade behind it, leaving a path that lingers for a few moments before dissolving into the greater hush. If you wanted to, you could imagine following that trail forever. It has that sort of gentleness, that sort of trustworthiness, and so you do follow, though even that word is too active. You allow yourself to be led. That is closer. The comet moves ahead, and you drift along after it, not because there is a command in its motion, but because your own stillness finds its direction in the wake of its light. The stars recede farther now. The nebula rises larger and more complex before you, its outer colors unfolding in broad, silent banners. Between you and that luminous vastness, the comet seems to write a single shining line through the dark. This way, softly. For a time, nothing else exists except that line of brightness, the deep quiet around it, and the slow certainty that you are being carried somewhere safe. Even anticipation, if it appears, never hardens into tension. The comet prevents that. It keeps the feeling fluid. You are not on your way to an event. You are being brought toward a state, toward a deeper room in the night, toward a gentler layer of the dream. The head of the comet brightens as it passes in front of a darker region of space, and for one lovely moment, it seems close enough to touch. You do not reach out. There is no need. Some beautiful things are better received than grasped, better witnessed than claimed. So you let it pass through your vision, like a promise written in light, and you keep floating after it, more relaxed with each quiet second. The trail behind it flickers with pale gold now, then silver again, then a hush of icy blue. Tiny particles seem to scatter from it and disappear, like seeds of light finding invisible soil. Each one is brief, each one vanishes before the mind can begin to count. That too is soothing. There is nothing to tally here, nothing to hold on to. The loveliness of the comet exists perfectly well without being possessed. Eventually, the comet begins to drift higher, curving in a long, graceful arc. The nebula now fills so much of the view ahead that it no longer feels distant at all. Its edges billow in translucent folds, deep interior colors pulse behind curtains of mist. The comet, having shown you the way, seems content to leave you to the last part of the approach on your own. And just before it passes beyond sight, it slows almost imperceptibly, or perhaps it only seems to, long enough for you to receive one final impression from it. That there is nowhere in this journey where you will be rushed, and nowhere in this great field of light where you will be unwelcome. Then it thins into brilliance, arcs away, and is gone. What remains is the luminous hush of its passing and the enormous, tender presence of the nebula just ahead. You are still calm, still held, still moving in that deep and effortless way that asks nothing of the body and very little of the mind. The threshold is near now, and all around you, the first loose veils of color begin to stretch outward as if to meet you. For a few moments after it disappears, you can still sense the shape of its passage in the dark, a delicate memory of motion, as though the space itself remembers being written across by light. That afterimage is soothing in its own right. It gives the mind something simple to rest upon, one clear, graceful line fading slowly into quiet. And because the comet left without spectacle, because it asked for no farewell, your own attention learns from it. It too begins to leave things gently, one thought, then another, one last alertness, then another. Everything grows smoother in its wake. The outer edge of the nebula is unlike any border you have ever known. It does not divide one place from another with firmness. It does not tell you, now you are inside, now you are out. Instead, it greets you the way fog greets a quiet shoreline before dawn, or the way music enters a room before the listener can identify where it began. You do not cross it all at once. You enter it by being softened into it. The first strands of luminous mist drift around you in long, transparent ribbons. They move with such ease that they seem almost sentient in their courtesy, curling aside without parting sharply, opening without tearing, making room rather than merely allowing passage. A pale violet stream brushes past your shoulder. A fold of blue-green light unfurls beneath you. Somewhere above, a veil of silver and rose thins and thickens, slowly changing shape as if responding to your presence in the gentlest possible way. Nothing here presses against you. That is the miracle of it. For all its richness, for all its strange celestial beauty, the nebula never overwhelms. Even now, as the colors deepen and the mist grows more intricate, your calm remains untouched. The place seems to understand exactly how much wonder a resting mind can hold without waking. So every color arrives softened, every movement is cushioned, every new detail is introduced like a whisper at the edge of a dream. You float deeper. The light around you is no longer distant now. It surrounds you from every side in broad, slow currents, warm in feeling, if not in temperature, alive in a way that has nothing to do with haste. Long plumes of indigo trail into pockets of pearl light. Threads of amber slip through lavender haze. Subtle greens appear and vanish like hidden gardens, briefly revealed beneath water. The darker portions are never threatening. They only make the brighter colors seem to bloom more tenderly. There is texture here too, delicate and impossible. The mist does not cling, yet it brushes your skin with a softness so complete, it seems almost emotional. Like being greeted kindly by a place, like stepping into a memory of comfort you did not know you had. There is no reason to keep the body alert in such a presence. The shoulders, already relaxed, grow softer still. The breath grows even more unforced. The mind stops checking where it is. At times, the swirling light gathers into shapes that almost resemble petals, or wings, or the slow turning folds of silk in deep water. Not fixed shapes, not literal ones, only passing suggestions, beautiful enough to notice and gentle enough to let go. This is important too. The nebula never demands that you hold a picture tightly. It offers image after image, the way the night sky offers clouds to a half-sleeping child. Enough to enchant, never enough to burden. The deeper you move, the more you feel that this place is not merely seen, but inhabited. Not by creatures or figures, by presence itself, by a vast and listening stillness, by an awareness woven through light and vapor and shadow, patient as winter moonlight and soft as down. You do not try to understand it. You simply sense that the nebula is not indifferent. It is attentive in the most peaceful way. It notices you without pinning you down. It receives you without requiring anything in return. If a thread of awe pulls a little more brightly through you now, the nebula answers it immediately with softness. Somewhere near your chest, the breath deepens and then eases. The mist around you grows warm in tone. A broad field of pale gold opens ahead like a lamp-lit chamber in the middle of the dark. And with that simple shift, the wonder settles back into safety. The journey remains restful. The unknown remains kind. You drift through a corridor of color where tiny sparks move lazily within the mist. Not flashing, but glowing, as though each one contains a patient heartbeat. They rise and fall in no discernible pattern. Some fade before they reach you. Others float near and pass with the faintest brush of warmth. The effect is so soothing that even curiosity begins to blur into drowsiness. You are no longer merely visiting a marvel. You are being lulled by it, and all the while, though the scenery grows more intricate, the pace never changes. This is the deep intelligence of the place. It knows that rest requires rhythm, so nothing leaps out. Nothing turns sharp. You continue inward at the speed of a long exhale. Safe, supported, unhurried. If you were to stop here and float for hours among these ribbons of living color, the nebula would not mind. It has no wish to move you along faster than your own stillness allows. But ahead, beneath the drifting curtains of light, another change begins. Not brighter exactly, though there is brightness in it. More like a gathering, a low interior trembling of tone and glow. As if somewhere deeper in the nebula, a hidden song is preparing to rise. At first you are not sure whether you hear it or only feel it. A quiet vibration moving through the luminous mist. A tone too low and subtle to belong to ordinary hearing. It arrives through the body more than the ear, like the faint hum of a distant bridge under steady wind, or the remembered resonance of a bell long after it has been struck. Yet there is nothing metallic in it, nothing harsh. Only depth, only steadiness. The mist around you seems to respond. Colors pulse a little more slowly, a little more clearly, in time with that deep, unseen note. A wash of blue softens to silver. A thread of rose expands and thins. A pocket of gold flickers gently, then settles. The whole nebula begins to feel less like a place filled with light, and more like an instrument shaped from light, playing itself in the dark with infinite patience. Another tone joins the first, higher, thinner, airy, as glass singing at the edge of touch. Then another, deeper than either, as though a far-off floor of hidden stars has begun to resonate. None of these sounds crowd one another. They gather in wide, slow layers, leaving ample space between them, so the mind never feels crowded by music. It feels cradled by it, held in it, rocked almost by the broad, graceful distance between one note and the next. You drift with the music as if it has always known the pace of your breath. Each inhalation seems to lift one strand of melody. Each exhalation lets it settle into a softer chord. Soon it is impossible to tell whether the symphony comes from the nebula or from the meeting point between your own inner quiet and the vast calm surrounding you. Perhaps it is both. Perhaps all truly soothing music comes from precisely such a meeting. The sounds deepen without growing heavier. There are bell-like glimmers. Yes, but so far off and softened that they feel almost like bright dust dissolving in air. There are long, warm notes, like distant strings being bowed beneath water. There are threads of whispering tone that move in and out of hearing, like pale creatures swimming through moonlit current. And beneath it all remains the original hum, broad and steady, a foundation gentle enough to trust with every part of your body. Nothing here is arranged for drama. There is no crescendo meant to stir you sharply awake. No sudden swell, no triumphant turn. The nebula understands the art of almost brighter, almost fuller, almost closer. In that restrained, tender unfolding, the music becomes all the more powerful. It has no ambition except to soothe, no purpose except to draw the mind away from its own edges. Memories may rise for a moment in such music, but if they do, they come softened. A hallway from childhood, light under a door, summer curtains moving before dawn, the hush of snowfall behind glass, they pass without sticking. The symphony leaves no room for grasping. It does not encourage thought. It encourages release. It lets each little image dissolve before it forms a story, leaving only the emotion behind, and then smoothing that emotion into stillness. Around you, the colors continue their slow choreography. Where a deeper note sounds, indigo expands in velvety fold. Where a lighter one glimmers, silver ripples bloom and thin away. The entire nebula seems to breathe in harmony with this layered lullaby. Even the small drifting sparks in the mist rise and fall to it, as if each particle has learned its place in the great patient song. If some small attentive part of you is still listening for change, the nebula meets that attentiveness kindly. It gives it something beautiful to rest on, something structured enough to follow for a moment, but soft enough that following soon becomes unnecessary. This is one of sleep's hidden doors. The mind offered just enough pattern to stop searching, then carried beyond the need to keep track of it. You are still safe, more than safe. The music itself keeps you safe now, holding the shape of the journey so you do not need to. The mist is warm around you. The path ahead glows faintly through layers of color. Your body is heavy in the best way, as though the bed and this cosmic drift have quietly become the same support. Nothing jars, nothing asks you to stay alert. You are being sung deeper into rest, and somewhere ahead, within the folds of music and light, there begins a subtle concentration of radiance. Not a flare, not a blaze, a gathering, a patient brightening at the heart of the song, as though the nebula, after welcoming you with color and with sound, is now preparing to show you what it has been quietly tending in its deepest room. Now and then the music seems to move farther away, not because it is leaving, but because distance itself has become part of the composition. A note will shine somewhere deep within the nebula and take a long, unhurried time to fade. And in that fading, you can feel the architecture of calm. Space between tones, mercy between impressions, silence not as absence, but as shelter. This is what keeps the music from ever crowding the mind. It gives each sound a pillow of stillness to rest on. Sometimes the tones arrive in pairs, one cool and one warm, one bright and one low, balancing each other so perfectly that the heart seems to settle between them. Sometimes there is only the hum again, vast and nearly featureless, and that too is enough. The nebula does not feel the need to entertain you. It is content to soothe you, and those are not the same thing. Entertainment keeps the mind lit. This music lets the mind lower its lamp. If a half dream begins to mingle with the sounds now, let it. Perhaps the notes become distant birds crossing evening sky. Perhaps they become glass wind chimes moving in a slow sea breeze no human house could contain. Perhaps they become nothing visual at all, only waves of softness touching the inside of thought. However they arrive, they ask for no decoding. They only help the waking world grow dimmer around the edges. And always, after any phrase that might have stirred a little extra wonder, the nebula answers with safety. A warmer chord, a broader pause, a slower pulse of light through the surrounding mist. It is as if the whole chamber has committed itself to preserving your drowsiness, even while offering you beauty. That balance is rare and profoundly kind. The gathering light does not rush toward its own becoming. That is the first and loveliest thing about it, even here. In the hidden heart of a nebula, where something new is taking shape, there is no violence to the process. No frantic bursting, no harsh collision, only a patient drawing together, as though countless filaments of brightness have agreed, over a span too long for clocks, to meet at last in one tender place. You drift nearer and see long currents of luminous mist bending inward from different directions. One is silver, with a pale blue core. Another glows faintly rose gold. Another is deep violet at the edges, brightening slowly as it approaches the center. They do not stream like rivers in flood. They move more like silk being drawn across still air, more like breath gathering before song. Each current folds into the next, and then into another, with such delicate precision that the whole process feels ceremonial. At the center of this convergence hangs a small dense brightness, no larger at first than a pearl viewed from far away. Yet everything around it seems oriented toward that little seed of light. The music holds steady. The mist continues its slow circular motion. The colors deepen. You have the feeling of watching not an event, but a vow being fulfilled. A promise kept by matter and time and darkness working together in absolute calm. As the currents continue to gather, the pearl of brightness changes. It thickens. It grows warmer in tone. What was once silver white begins to hold gold at its heart. Then a richer amber. Then the faintest suggestion of living fire. But even fire is too fierce a word for this. There is no crackle here. No heat that threatens. The growing core shines. The way a lantern shines behind thick paper, or the way dawn glows through winter mist before the sun itself is visible. Awe moves through you then, but it comes wrapped in peace, just as everything here has. You know, without needing to announce it to yourself, that you are watching a star being born. Not the star at full strength, not yet blazing in its long future glory, but the beginning of it. The first inward gathering, the first deep, bright certainty. The moment when what was only possibility begins to choose its shape. The nebula seems to hush around that realization. Even the music grows slightly wider between notes, offering the sight more room. The converging streams of light continue to feed the brightening core, and in that nourishment, there is something almost maternal, though the word hardly captures the grandeur of it. The nebula is not manufacturing. It is sheltering, holding, warming, making a chamber in which brightness may become itself without fear. You remain at a perfect distance, close enough to feel wonder, far enough to keep every nerve at ease. This too feels intentional. The place allows you to witness without ever asking you to endure intensity. The new star does not glare, it blooms. The surrounding mist catches its growing light and turns luminous from within, as though entire veils of color have become lantern shades for this hidden celestial hearth. Time loosens here. It becomes impossible to know whether the star brightens over minutes or centuries, or some measure that belongs only to the deep interior life of the cosmos. Yet because you are in a dreamlike place, and because rest has already softened your grasp on ordinary sequence, it feels natural to watch without counting. The mind, relieved of the need to measure, sinks further into quiet. Now the core grows steadier, not merely brighter, but more assured. The currents around it no longer seem to be searching for a center. They have found one. They fold inward with a calm devotion, and the young star answers with a glow that pulses gently through the surrounding mist. Each pulse is warm in tone, like light passing through honey, then milk, then pearl. Each pulse seems to say in a language too ancient for words, yes, yes, yes. You feel that assent in yourself as well, not because the star is about you, but because watching creation unfold in such stillness reminds some hidden place in you that becoming does not always have to be loud. Growth does not always have to be urgent. Newness does not always arrive by breaking things apart. Sometimes it gathers, sometimes it is protected, sometimes it is sung into being over ages by patience and dark and sheltering light. The idea is so comforting that it quiets you even more. If the universe can make a star this gently, perhaps you too are allowed to soften into whatever you are becoming. Perhaps nothing in you needs to be forced tonight. Perhaps even your tiredness is a kind of holy dimness before rest. The thought does not stay long enough to become philosophy. It only passes through, like warmth. At last, the young star reaches a kind of first still fullness. It is not finished, because stars are never finished in the human sense, but it has crossed some invisible threshold. Its light now remains, rather than gathering and fading. It holds, golden at the center, white at the edges, radiant but mild. The surrounding currents begin to relax their inward motion, circling instead in broad protective loops, as though the nebula, satisfied that the new fire is steady, can now exhale. You exhale with it, and immediately, as if knowing that even wonder this tender must be followed by rest, the space around the newborn star softens. The music lowers, the nearby mists widen into calmer forms. No triumph sounds, no announcement is made. The miracle simply becomes part of the hush, and what remains after it is not excitement, but a deep and beautiful tenderness. You are safe here. The brightness does not demand anything from your eyes. The greatness of what you have seen does not ask you to stay mentally awake. Instead, it seems to bless your drowsiness, to wrap itself around it like an extra layer of warmth. The nebula has shown you something rare, and now, with quiet generosity, it begins leading you away from the intensity of becoming and toward an even gentler place farther within. As you drift away from the chamber of the young star, the surrounding light changes almost at once. Not dimmer exactly, but softer in intent, less focused, more spacious. The currents that had converged so carefully around the center loosen into long, unhurried swirls, and the music that guided your attention there broadens into a quieter, simpler humming. Everything about this deeper region says the same thing. Nothing more needs to happen now. The mist here is pale and delicate, pearled with silver and the gentlest blue. There are places where a faint lavender rests inside it like dusk inside snow. Elsewhere, soft gold lingers in translucent pools, warm but muted, as though the memory of the newborn star still glows in the surrounding cloud without needing to announce itself. The whole chamber feels like the exhale after tears that never quite fell, or the hush after a candle is trimmed and left to burn smaller and steadier. You do not feel that anything has ended. That would be too sharp a thought for this place. Instead, it feels as if the nebula has turned one page and revealed behind it a quieter page. One made not of event, but of aftermath, of gentle residue, of the peace that follows sacred labor. Some part of you may love this chamber even more than the one before, because here there is less to watch and more to sink into. Cloud-like folds of luminous vapor, open and close in slow breathing motion. They never block your way. They only shape it beneath you, or perhaps around you. A broad region of mist gathers into a texture so soft-looking that your whole body seems to recognize it before the mind does. Resting place, that is the sensation. A cradle hidden inside light. A place not merely to pass through, but to settle. And still the nebula keeps your calm protected. After the wonder of witnessing a star's first bright steadiness, it gives you gentleness in return. It gives you less detail to follow, fewer changes to track. Broader colors, simpler music, the kindest possible downshift. The mind, which might otherwise have brightened after seeing so much beauty, finds itself instead wrapped in a great, easing quiet. You move deeper into this pearled interior and notice the faintest shimmer rising through it, like snow seen from afar under moonlight. Countless soft particles drift without direction, neither ascending nor falling, only lingering in the slow circulation of the chamber. When they pass nearby, they leave behind the feeling of cool silk against warm skin. So subtle a sensation that you almost cannot tell whether it happened, and that uncertainty makes it soothing rather than stimulating. The hum beneath everything remains, steady, low, vast. But it has changed now. It no longer feels like a song unfolding. It feels like shelter continuing, like the sound a great safe house might make if one could hear its foundations resting in the earth. You lean into it without effort, and your body responds with another layer of heaviness, another small surrender of muscle and thought. Ahead, the mist begins to gather into a shape broader and gentler than the passing folds around it. A mound, perhaps, a crescent, a billow of pale light with a center so soft-looking that it seems impossible it could be made of anything except rest itself. You do not rush toward it. You simply notice, with the quiet delight of someone half asleep, that the nebula has prepared somewhere for you to lay down. That recognition brings no urgency, only relief. You are still floating, still carried, still completely safe. Yet now there is also the promise of being held more closely, supported not only by vastness, but by touch, not only by drifting, but by settling. The journey, which has been so spacious and tender all along, begins to fold inward into intimacy. Nothing abrupt marks the transition. No voice tells you that you have reached the next part. The mist simply grows softer beneath you. The shape ahead becomes clearer. The light surrounding it warms by a single degree, the way a room warms when a blanket is placed over sleeping shoulders. And you understand, without needing to say it, that the center of the nebula has made a bed of light and cloud, and that it is waiting for your weight. There is a sweetness in aftermath that many waking hours overlook, the sweetness of a room after guests have gone and the candles still burn low, the sweetness of shoreline after the wave has drawn back, leaving only sheen and quiet foam, the sweetness of a thought once difficult, now too softened by night to keep its old shape. This chamber holds that kind of sweetness everywhere. It asks for less from you, and because it asks for less, it can soothe more deeply. The broad shape ahead, the one that waits like a crescent of resting cloud, seems to brighten as you notice it, though not in any way that demands your full attention. More as a bed seems to become more inviting the nearer sleep comes. More as a pillow seems to deepen when the neck has finally decided to trust it. You feel no need to hurry toward it, yet your whole body understands that comfort is close now, closer than before, and the understanding makes every breath easier. You drift down so gently that there is almost no moment of landing. One breath you are suspended above the luminous cloud, and by the next you are part of it, received into its softness with such perfect ease that the body gives up its final little preparations all at once. There is no jolt, no bounce, only welcome. The surface beneath you yields just enough, embracing your shape without swallowing it, supporting every place that asks to be supported. It is softer than feathers, softer than moss, softer than fresh snow imagined from a warm room. Yet none of those comparisons quite holds, because the cloud is not only soft, it is responsive. It seems to know where your weight rests and to rise in exactly those places, as though the nebula itself has learned the art of comfort and is practicing it with extraordinary care. Your back settles first, then your shoulders, then the back of your head. The legs become heavy in a pleasant way, as if each muscle has finally been persuaded that its long watch is over. The arms rest with no need to find the right position. even the small unnoticed places in the body, the corners that sometimes remain faintly braced despite all attempts to relax, begin to unclench in the presence of such complete support. The cloud is cool and warm at once. Cool the way clean night air is cool when it enters a room in summer. Warm the way a held hand is warm when no words are needed. These two sensations meet and balance so perfectly that the body has no argument left against surrender. You do not need to adjust. You do not need to settle in stages. You are settled already. Around you, the mist folds inward in broad, protective curves, not closing you in, never that, only creating a sense of being surrounded by softness in every direction. Above you, translucent veils of color pass slowly overhead, filtering the distant glow into gentle shades of pearl, faint blue, silver lilac, milk gold. The whole chamber feels like the inside of a lullaby too vast to hear all at once. You lie there while the hum of the nebula moves through the cloud and into you. It is different now that you are resting. Before, the sound accompanied you. Now, it supports you from beneath, resonating through the bed of light itself in long, steady waves. With each quiet pulse, you feel more deeply held, more perfectly placed, more convinced that there is nowhere else in all the wide dark where your body could have been better received. And because the cloud is so kind, it does something rarer even than comfort. It removes the last need to maintain yourself. You do not have to keep any emotional posture here. No need to appear fine. No need to gather yourself into coherence. No need to explain your tiredness to anyone, or turn it into a lesson, or make it meaningful. You are allowed to be only a breathing, resting being in a cradle of luminous mist. That is enough, more than enough. Perhaps that is why a feeling of belonging begins to rise so naturally here. Not the brittle belonging of fitting in, or performing the right version of yourself, or earning your place through usefulness. Something quieter than that, older than that. The belonging of being allowed to exist without translation. The belonging of a body finally laid down. The belonging of being met at your most unguarded and found entirely welcome. The cloud gently molds around your hips, your shoulders, the curve of your side, the back of your knees. If you imagine turning your face slightly into its softness, it welcomes that too. If you imagine one hand sinking just a little deeper, it receives the hand and gives it back at the exact depth of rest. Everything about this place suggests not passive comfort, but active care, the kind that notices before you even ask. There is no loneliness here. This matters in a sleep story more than in almost any other kind of story, because the hour of sleep can make even safe rooms feel briefly far away from the world. But the nebula has anticipated that. It has filled this chamber with presence, not crowded presence, not watchful presence, only the unmistakable sensation that something vast and gentle is near, and that it means you no harm at all. It keeps company the way moonlight keeps company with a still lake by being enough. As you rest more deeply, the edges between your body and the cloud seem to blur in the most soothing way. Not as if you are disappearing, only as if the distinction between being held and holding has become less important. The bed of light carries you. Your own heaviness answers it. The hum moves through both. Breath rises and falls within the shared softness. You are not merging with the nebula so much as consenting to be cared for by it. A thought might drift by here, something small and tender. Perhaps that you did not know how tired you were until now. If so, let that thought float past without needing to pin it down. The cloud is already doing the more important work. It is convincing the deeper parts of you that rest is not only permitted, but protected. That you may let go further than you expected. That you may stop listening for danger. That you may lie here in the middle of impossible beauty and simply become drowsy. And when at last your whole body seems to trust the cradle beneath it, when your breath has become slow enough to blur the count of it, When the colors above you have softened into a near dream haze, something in the hum changes. Not suddenly, not enough to wake you. It only grows more intimate, more shape, as though the nebula, satisfied that you are finally comfortable, is leaning a little closer to speak. The first words are not really words. They are more like meanings arriving complete, carried on the deep warm hum beneath you. A sense of being addressed without being startled. A sense that the chamber of light around you has been listening all along. Not to your language, but to the finer weather of your heart. Then, slowly, the meanings gather into phrases simple enough to recognize. You are welcome here. The sentence does not ring out. It settles. It enters you the way warmth enters hands held near a fire on a winter evening. You do not need to answer it. You do not need to believe it with effort. The nebula is not asking for agreement. It is merely offering truth in the most restful form it can. The cloud beneath you holds a little more closely. The colors above drift into a pale, sheltering gold. And again the meaning comes, this time wider, kinder, carrying more than one thought at once. You do not have to arrive here polished. You do not have to make yourself simpler to be held. Nothing in you is too tangled for rest. That last part opens inside you, like a small hidden room. So often tiredness comes braided with judgment. Why am I still carrying this? Why did that stay with me? Why can I not simply stop thinking? But the nebula has no interest in those questions. It regards your weariness with the same tenderness it gave the forming star. Not as a flaw, not as an inconvenience, as something to be sheltered while it softens. Its voice, if voice is the right word, seems to move through the very light of the chamber. When the silver deepens, the message feels cooler, clearing the mind. When gold passes through the mist, the words feel warm and close, like a blanket drawn higher. When a wash of violet drifts overhead, the meaning becomes vast and mysterious, less like speech than like ancient reassurance remembered at last. You lie still and let it come. You have carried enough for one day. Again, nothing sharp, nothing commanding, simply a sentence broad as the night, steady as breath. And because it is offered without demand, your body accepts it more easily than it would advice. The shoulders lower a fraction more. The jaw loosens. The little hidden effort behind the eyes dissolves. Carried enough? Yes, enough. The nebula seems pleased by that surrender, if a cloud of light can be pleased. The hum deepens. Tiny sparks drift through the chamber and dissolve before reaching the edges. The whole place feels like a sanctuary made not of walls, but of permission. Permission to stop rehearsing conversations. Permission to stop defending yourself against hours that have already passed. Permission to stop being the caretaker of every unresolved feeling at once. Rest here, the presence says, and let what is heavy become simple. And one by one, heaviness does grow simpler, not gone perhaps, not transformed into joy or wisdom, but softened enough to lose its hooks. A difficult look from someone, a phrase remembered too many times, a private disappointment that had gone on making ripples long after the moment passed. Under the nebula's patient attention, these things do not vanish theatrically. They merely lose their sharpness. They become pebbles at the bottom of clear water. Visible if one insists on looking, but no longer cutting the skin. The words continue at long intervals, always leaving more silence than speech between them. That, too, is part of their kindness. There is room for them to settle, room for the body to respond, room for the mind to drift half away and still receive what matters. You are not behind. That message surprises some quiet place in you. So much of waking life is measured against invisible clock. Plans, milestones, replies, improvements, recoveries. But lying in the center of a dreaming nebula, held by a bed of light older than any deadline, the idea becomes almost laughably small. Behind what, compared to whom, the stars are not hurrying. The newborn fire in the inner chamber did not rush its arrival. The mist above you takes its time becoming one color and then another. Nothing in this great field of being is ashamed of its own pace. You breathe out, and with the breath leaves a tension you did not know was knotted around time itself. The nebula notices. Yes, it seems to say without fully speaking, even that may rest. A faint movement ripples through the cloud under your back, like a hand smoothing wrinkles from linen. A cool silver light passes over your forehead. The effect is immediate and deeply childlike in its comfort. You are being tended, not analyzed, not improved. Tended, you are allowed to be unfinished and still be loved by the night. That sentence is so gentle that it barely feels like language. Yet it enters the body more deeply than many louder truths ever do. Unfinished, of course. Every living thing is unfinished. A melody halfway through, a garden between seasons, a tide between shores. Why should you have expected yourself to be any different? Here, in the nebula's quiet keeping, incompleteness does not diminish worth. It makes room for tenderness. Silence follows for a long while, long enough that you could fall asleep inside it and lose the rest of the message entirely. Long enough that the hum and your breathing become almost one rhythm. Long enough for the cloud to cradle you into deeper trust. Then, from somewhere both around you and within you, another meaning rises. Nothing gentle is ever wasted. Perhaps that is why the stars along your path felt like companion. Why the comet came and went so elegantly. Why the music did not swell too sharply. Why the nebula has done all this work of keeping your calm intact. Gentleness matters here. It is not decoration. It is not weakness. It is one of the secret structures of the universe, one of the quiet ways life continues. You may rest your whole weight now. If there was still a part of you staying slightly lifted, slightly prepared, it hears this and lets go. The hips sink a little more, the shoulders widen, the back of the skull grows heavy in the luminous softness. Even the thoughts begin to lie down rather than sit upright. You do not need to hold yourself above your own rest. The cloud will hold you. The night will hold you. This vast unseen kindness will hold you until even the idea of holding is gone. There are more meanings after that, each one sparse and well-spaced, like lamps in a long, dark hallway. You do not have to return to every old sorrow tonight. The heart can sleep without solving itself. What is tender in you is not fragile. It is alive. You may be quiet now. You may be quiet now. That last one repeats, not because the nebula fears you missed it, but because repetition is one of sleep's oldest doors. The second time the sentence arrives, it is softer, almost woven into the hum beneath you. The third time, it is not spoken at all. It simply exists as a condition of the chamber, quiet aloud, quiet protected, quiet shared. If a tear were to form in such a place, it would not be an alarming thing. If a smile were to flicker and pass, that too would be natural. The nebula leaves room for small feeling without stirring large storms. It understands that the heart sometimes empties itself in tiny ways when it finally feels safe. Whatever rises is held lightly and allowed to settle. After a time, the messages become less distinct, or perhaps you become less interested in where one ends and the next begin. Meaning continues to flow through the light, but it no longer arrives as sentences. It arrives as atmosphere, as a deep certainty that you are not misplaced in the world. That tonight is not a test. That rest is not something you must deserve. That being alive is enough work for one body, and sleep may come as a gift rather than as a reward. The most tender realization of all comes near the end, so quietly that you almost mistake it for your own thought. You were always allowed to come this far into softness. Something inside you, old and careful, loosens when it hears that. Perhaps it has been standing at the doorway of deeper rest for years. Believing entry required some special safety, some perfect exhaustion, some cleared conscience, some finished life. But no, the doorway was simply waiting, and now here you are, beyond it, already carried far inside. The nebula does not say goodbye when its speaking grows faint. It has no need to close the moment. It only leaves you with one final felt truth. Broad as the chamber, quiet as starlight on snow, you may sleep while the universe keeps watch. And then even that fades into the hum, and the hum fades into the cloud, and the cloud holds you in a silence so complete and loving that time itself begins to lose interest in moving forward. After that, there is very little to do except remain. The chamber does not change quickly. That is one of its mercies. The colors above you continue their slow passing, but now they are broader, less detailed, as though the nebula itself has dimmed the sharpness of its beauty, so that nothing in you feels obliged to keep watching. Pale blue gives way to silver, silver gathers a hint of lavender, lavender softens into pearl, then all of it thins into a kind of luminous dusk that asks nothing of the eyes. The hum remains under everything, though it too has become simpler. No longer a layered music, no longer even a song, more like the sound of distance itself resting. More like a vast purr beneath creation. You stop trying to listen to it as sound and begin to feel it as support. A field of steadiness, a low continuous kindness. Tiny sparks move through the mist above, fewer now than before, drifting slowly and then dissolving. They remind you of things that belong to the gentlest hours of earth, embers settling in a fireplace after everyone has gone to bed, dust turning in early morning light, snow crossing the beam of a porch lamp when no one is outside to watch it. That is the pace of this chamber now, the pace of almost nothing happening, and the immense relief of that. Your body grows heavier, but the heaviness is not dull or trapped. It is content. The cloud beneath you receives each added ounce of surrender as if it were waiting for precisely that. The back sinks deeper. The legs become wonderfully absent. The hands no longer seem placed anywhere in particular. They simply rest. Even the face, which so often keeps its own secret tensions for reasons the mind cannot explain, becomes quiet and unremarkable. Thought loses its appetite. This may be one of the sweetest parts of the night, the point at which the mind no longer wants to chase itself down long halls of association. A thought may begin and then forget why it started. An image may rise and blur before it knows its own edges. A memory may approach, softened so completely by the nebula's hush that it passes like a pale fish beneath still water and is gone. Nothing hooks, nothing insists. The old machinery of mental continuation begins to idle, then quiet. If you notice this happening, there is no need to notice for long. Awareness itself is becoming drowsy. It touches things and lets them go at once. The colors pass overhead. The hum continues. The cloud holds. Breath rises, breath falls. This is enough structure now for the whole night. Somewhere far beyond the chamber, stars continue their silent burning. The young star in the inner room continues its sheltered beginning. The comet has long since slipped into distances too soft to picture. The path that brought you here remains in the memory of the nebula, if not in your active mind. All of that goes on without you needing to keep company with it. The universe does not require your attention in order to remain beautiful. That realization is profoundly restful. So much of waking life seems to demand witness, management, participation. But here, deep in a bed of luminous mist, you are free from that old assignment. Things may continue without you. The stars may keep shining. The chambers of light may keep breathing. Time may continue its gentle opening and folding. You are allowed to sleep through the beauty. You are allowed to trust that it remains. The cloud seems to rock, not with motion exactly, but with a kind of rhythmic permission. A subtle rise in softness, then a settling, a cradle's pattern translated into light. With each repetition, the body trusts more completely. Sleep is no longer an event on the horizon. It is already touching the edges of you, already entering in little unfinished ways, already making language feel heavier than silence. There is no final lesson here, no polished meaning left waiting at the end. This too is part of the kindness. Stories for waking life often gather themselves into conclusions. But the night does not need conclusions. It prefers continuations so soft they can be slept through. It prefers images that remain half open, a cloud still glowing, a chamber still humming, a sky still scattered with patient stars, a body still being held. You may begin to feel as if the chamber is both enormous and very near, boundless and close enough to curl around your breathing. That contradiction does not need to be solved. Sleep often arrives through such gentle impossibilities. The mind ceases objecting. The heart does not mind. Rest has room for vastness and intimacy at once. The light dims another degree, not darkness, only deeper tenderness, the kind that makes the eyes want to close even if they are already closed, the kind that blurs the difference between listening and dreaming, the kind that lets whole stretches of time disappear without any sense of losing them. Somewhere in that dimming, the last active corners of the mind lie down beside the rest. Nothing more is coming, not because anything has been withheld, but because enough has already been given. Enough quiet, enough beauty, enough reassurance, enough softness to carry you the rest of the way without another word. The nebula understands this perfectly. It has guided you as far as speech can guide. What remains belongs to sleep itself, and sleep prefers not to be crowded. So the chamber continues in the simplest possible way. A pale glow through mist, a hum under softness, a body resting at the center of something immeasurably kind. If there are still thoughts, they are loose and wandering, unable to gather force. If there are still images, they are faint and lovely and unconcerned with stain. If there is still a sense of self, it is quiet enough now to feel almost like another drifting spark in the luminous dark. And because the story does not wish to close around you like a lid, it loosens instead. It opens outward. The chamber remains. The cloud remains. The stars keep watch beyond the veils of light. Somewhere the young star continues its sheltered glow. Somewhere the comet moves through other silences. And here, at the soft heart of all this vastness, you rest without needing to follow anything further. The last part of the night is the gentlest, because by now, the night no longer needs to persuade you. Your breathing has become slow enough to disappear into itself. Your body is heavy enough to seem weightless again. The cloud beneath you and the darkness beyond it have entered a quiet agreement to keep you perfectly still. No voice speaks now. If meaning remains, it remains in the simplest forms, in the steadiness under your back, in the softness at your shoulders, in the cool and warm balance of the mist around your face, in the long unbroken hush that stretches from the chamber of light out into distances too calm to imagine clearly. Everything says the same thing without language. Rest can continue. A final veil of color passes overhead, so faint you nearly miss it. A wash of pale silver touched with blue. Then even that melts into a pearled dimness that feels less like something seen and more like the inside of sleep itself. The sparks above have thinned to almost none. The hum has sunk so deeply into the cloud that it is no longer separate from the sensation of being held. Breath rises, breath falls. Somewhere between the two, the waking mind loosens its last careful knot. If there is any thought left, let it be a small and easy one. Perhaps only this: I am safe enough now. Or perhaps not even that. Perhaps only a softness where thought used to be. The night is content with either. It has no preference except that you be undisturbed. The stars beyond the chamber keep their silent watch. They do not need your eyes open for that. The nebula keeps its long, patient glow. It does not need your attention for that either. The young star rests in its sheltered beginning. The cloud keeps the shape of your body with exquisite care. Everything that needs to continue will continue. Nothing will be lost because you have fallen asleep. This is one of the oldest comforts there is, that the world may go on gently without requiring your participation, and that your sleep can become part of its gentleness rather than an absence from it. Here, in this impossible cradle hidden in the deep hush of the cosmos, you are not stepping away from life. You are being gathered back into one of its most merciful rhythms. So the body sinks a fraction deeper. The jaw loosens a fraction more. The forehead smooths. The hands grow quiet. The thoughts become too soft to finish, and the space between one breath and the next becomes wide enough for dreaming to enter. There is no edge to this moment, no bell, no curtain dropping, only the long, tender slope of drowsiness carrying you farther in. The chamber remains open around you. The cloud continues to hold you. The stars continue their patient burning in the unseen distance. The nebula keeps watch with all its silent light, and somewhere inside that watchfulness sleep arrives so gently that it barely feels like arrival at all. It is only this, softness continuing, stillness deepening, breath after breath, the night keeping you, the cloud holding you. The far lights awake enough for both of you, and you, at last, with nothing left to do and nowhere left to go, resting so completely in that vast and tender hush that even these last few words can begin to drift apart, leaving more and more space between them, more quiet, more dimness, more of that deep and easy falling inward, until the story is no longer really speaking, only lingering nearby like a warm light behind closed eyes, while you go on drifting and drifting and drifting. Any wish to stay aware of the story can rest now too. You have followed far enough. You have listened more than enough. Sleep does not require loyalty to the final sentence. It only asks that you let the final sentence grow too soft to matter. So if these words begin to blur, if one slips away before the next is finished, if meaning thins into a warm, drifting murmur, that is not losing the story. That is the story doing its truest work, somewhere, if you cared to imagine it. The chamber of the newborn star still glows deep within the nebula, protected and patient. Somewhere the music still lives in the mist, though far away now, too gentle to hear directly. Somewhere the long path of stars remains set out through the darkness, and somewhere the comet continues on its elegant way. But none of those places need you awake. They belong to the same calm that now belongs to your sleep. And if, in the last thin edge of wakefulness, you feel the tiniest trace of gratitude, let even that become heavy and quiet. No need to name it, no need to hold it. Let it sink with the rest of you into the cloud's luminous hush, where everything that is kind becomes simpler, dimmer, slower, and more dreamlike, until there is only the long, soft continuation of rest, the almost unnoticeable drift of breathing, and the gentle sense that all through the remaining night you will be carried, and carried, and carried still,